Friday here on the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko breaking things down. We now know that the Steelers are going to have a bit more salary cap space, as will the rest of the NFL. What does that do for the Steelers? We talk about that. We look at the running back position and who the Steelers could try to add in the free agency period before the NFL draft. And we take a look at a quarterback comparison to Justin Fields. Is there another guy like him out there? We'll do all that here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive Podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive Podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined by Brian Batko, one of our esteemed Steelers beat writers. And as always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Whether you're injured in a car accident or hurt on the job, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped injured victims for over 40 years recover more than $2 billion in their behalf. If you or a loved one have been seriously injured in an accident, call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Brian, let's talk
Chris,
about
your last show in Western Pennsylvania for a while, huh?
Oh, it is. Yeah. I'm going to South Bend today, if you're watching this on Friday, to cover Pitt Notre Dame, then be in Indianapolis all next week for the Combine, then Louisville, Kentucky for Pitt at Louisville. So, goodbye, Western PA. I hardly knew you.
Are you excited for this long road trip of yours? And do you have the mic and everything ready to record these on the road?
Oh, absolutely, brother. I got a whole to-go setup. I'm used to this. Is my third Combine. I'm used to setting up my stuff on the road. Got my little lights thing here. I've been very strategic. I have had to make some weird setups and some weird Airbnbs over the year, but we're doing all hotels this trip, so it's going to be a lot easier this time around.
So you could you'll do a show from Indiana, obviously.
Yeah.
Kentucky, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, South Bend's pretty close to Michigan. Maybe you could find a truck stop in Michigan to just hit 3 states, shows in 3 different states next week.
Could also just stop in Ohio on my way back.
Yeah, you could probably cross over into Illinois if you really wanted to, but maybe next year.
Yeah, look at that. But let's talk about this salary cap situation. The NFL announced that the salary cap would increase this year by at least approximately $7 million for all teams across the NFL. And while that helps everyone equilaterally, I do think it's interesting that now you look at the Steelers' salary cap space after cutting Preston Smith, they're up to a little over $60 million in salary cap space. If they were to cut Larry Ogunjobi, like I think they will, that'll jump up to 67, and then they can still make other moves to get over $70 million. That's a lot of cap space for the Steelers to figure things out. Brian, what do you think that does for Omar Khan in the level of aggressiveness that they can give him in this free agency period to go get some guys as well as handle the quarterback situation?
Yeah, I mean, I was on Twitter when this news came out, and the guy who runs overthecap.com, Jason something or other, I don't know, his name's just Jason OTC, but I mean, I think he does a really great job with tracking all this. And I mean, his viewpoint is, the cap going up exponentially again actually helps the teams at the bottom more, the ones that didn't plan out into the future as well, which I can understand that, because you go from having very little wiggle room and possibly approaching the 2025 season with we're not really going to be able to do much of anything except run it back, pray that our players get better, and we might end up going 4-13. Well, now you've got a little bit more cushion to potentially go out there and make a move that changes the trajectory of your team for the upcoming season. For the organizations like the Steelers and the ones above them in cap space, I mean, yes, it helps, but you were already going to have an advantage in this season. So I do think it's kind of a blanket. Everybody benefits, and if everyone benefits, nobody really benefits. But for a team that needs a quarterback and doesn't have one signed, yes, I think you can certainly spin this as this is a good development, because we know the cost of doing business at that position. We know that you're probably going to have to throw a deal out there to somebody to be your starter that fans might balk at because it just doesn't seem smart compared to 5 to 10 years ago, but salaries have changed, especially at QB. I think like the biggest example of this is with Gardner Minshew last offseason getting $15 million over 3 years from the Raiders, which I thought was not a good idea, but nonetheless, it was a move that happened on the open market, and it kind of just sent up a signal or a flag of like, yeah, this is how you have to operate to get a starter at that spot. And we'll see if the Steelers want to go the get what you pay for route and try to find value again like they did last offseason, or if this increase will make them a little bit more emboldened to take a bigger swing and pay up a little more and risk throwing bad money out there, but obviously the upside of getting somebody who will be an upgrade.
Cost of doing business. What are you, Mike Tomlin? Get out of here with that. But
use of salary cap resources.
Yeah, but I think that the point here is that they do have space to do things, and it's gonna be interesting to see how it does to reconstruct different parts of the roster. There's already been big flips, right? By Omar Khan to try to find answers both in the draft and in free agent talent that he's brought to the Steelers. And I think now it's like, okay, here's the third chapter as far as what he's trying to do to kind of make up for the lack of first round talents over a certain stretch. I mean, you think about it, the only first round contributors on this team that have been picked, since 2017 that were with the Steelers were TJ Watt, Najee Harris, and Broderick Jones. Other than them, Devin Bush has been gone. Terrell Edmonds has been gone. They didn't have a first rounder in 2020. Granted, so
you can kind of throw Minka in that bucket, I guess.
So I guess we could throw Minka in there, but Kenny Pickett's gone already. So you're missing like some key talent there. It takes some reinvestment and realigning things to make things work. And again, they flipped Chase Claypool, their first pick of that, the first actual pick of that draft, into Joey Porter Jr. So I think Omar Khan's done a decent job finding some spots here and there. Like, he's also made some, like Deshaun Elliott was a heck of a signing when you look at, what he's costing them right now. But
that's
now
a tough way to build a team.
Exactly. It's a very tough way to build a team. It's why the Steelers prefer for decades, they don't want to operate through free agency. They want to have that just be the supplemental thing because they develop guys really well and they hold on to guys. That's why for many years people were saying, oh, why aren't the Steelers making splashes in free agency? It's because they develop their guys and they like their draft picks. So they're paying their guys and they're not having as much money left over to go and try to find dudes in free agency.
I feel like a lot of teams are doing that, Chris. I mean, just anecdotally off the top of my head, I mean, it seems like every year we sit here in February and March and kind of rag on the free agent options at position X or position Y. And it's like, quarterback, there's not much out there. Wide receiver, nothing's really jumping off the page at you, because I think teams are getting savvier about, either the drafting and paying to retain those players, or, I mean, I think the newer trend in the NFL over the last, 5 to 10 years, but certainly the Rams kind of popularized it. The Eagles have struck some gold with it, is trading for guys before they even hit free agency. And then, that way you sway a team to make that move. You give them some compensation in return to kickstart their rebuild through the draft. And then you end up being the ones who negotiate with that player, and you don't have to negotiate against 31 other teams. So, the Steelers found that route useful, I think, with Minkah Fitzpatrick. And, otherwise they've kind of struck out on some of the trades in terms of helpful NFL players coming back to them. But they've done a decent job in offloading some players and getting some future picks, Kevin Dotson notwithstanding, because I think the Rams probably won that trade, to say the least. And yet, if the Steelers were a little bit better at maybe playing the comp pick game, they could be in line with some of these other teams that have a lot of draft capital to burn through.
Yeah, I think there's always different strategies as far as how you try to build through different ways. And right now the Steelers are, I think, just in a unique position for historic reasons, that they have this much money to spend, and we'll see how they do spend it as free agency opens up next month. But one of the positions we've talked a little bit about is running back. I want to talk with Brian about some of their options, both in free agency, or if they should wait for the draft, or if they should bring back the guy who's been their number one running back for the last 4 seasons. All that here and next on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. But first, I want to remind you the show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. If you're injured in an accident, you're probably wondering what's next. Well, for over 40 years, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped injury victims answer that very question. Whether it's gathering evidence, collecting medical records, or dealing with the insurance companies, Edgar Snyder Associates has helped over 75,000 people handle the question, what's next? Call 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit www.edgarsnyder.com for a free consultation. Remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Brian, let's talk about running back, because I don't think this is a great running back free agent class. I think this is a heck of a draft class for running back, especially if you want to get one in the middle rounds. But you look at the running backs that are available right now, and that look like they're going to be available in free agency, whether it's Aaron Jones, Raheem Mostert, Nick Chubb, AJ Dillon. Chubb might be a whole different ballgame if he didn't have the injury that he sustained, 2 seasons ago against the Steelers, and people wondering about that. But
if he didn't, the Browns probably wouldn't be letting him walk. So
exactly. So there's a lot of guys like that. But the one guy who I think actually should be at the top of the list is Najee Harris. When you look at all the guys out there, he has the experience. He's had the playability. He's 27 years old. The playability. Just the ability.
I thought you said big playability, and I was gonna be like, hold on, that's no. I don't know if I'd say that, but
no, I did not say big play. I ain't crazy over here, Brian. But he's extremely durable. He's a guy there, and if you're looking for a steady Eddie at running back that can not fumble the ball and give you a physical option, I think he makes a lot of sense for a lot of teams. But the question is, would that make sense for just the Steelers to keep back? Now, Brian, I think realistically, that would have meant that they would have kept a 5th-year extension if they really planned that. But, our own Jerry Dulac saying that the door's not closed in that possibility. What say you about, 1, Najee Harris and the Steelers, and 2, just the running back class, the running back free agency class in the Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, it pales in comparison to last year, which was really a historically amazing running back class. I mean, I think we knew that going in, and then especially – and some of that, of course, dictated by just the way the market is going at that position and being devalued. But I don't think the Ravens or the Eagles regret signing Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. And if anything, what those 2 guys did may have flipped the script on how teams are going to treat running backs going forward. And we might not see another class at that level anytime soon. But the fact that both those guys hit the open market in the same offseason was wild, even more so now in hindsight. But with Najee, I think it's a 2-way street, and I don't doubt Jerry's reporting on that, but I think it's a 2-way street. And I think, yes, the Steelers knew when they declined his 5th-year option that he wasn't really elevating this offense in a lot of ways. He was fine, but not the type of guy that you're going to pay big bucks to. I'm pretty sure Najee felt a certain way about that, even though he kept his head about him every time he was asked. And
he was a good soldier about it.
He wasn't asked very often because Najee doesn't talk very often. So he kind of minimized his own opportunities to really say anything incendiary on that front. But, good strategy, I guess, by him, PR wise. So I think he had probably made up his mind at that point too, of like, okay, they don't believe in me long term. I'm going to be somewhere else next year. And, I'll play hard as I always do to finish this out, but then I'm getting a chance to pick my team again, which I haven't done yet in the NFL. So I think he's going to end up elsewhere. It's not like I think this conversation would be different, Chris, if we had seen a different Najee Harris in 2024. And part of me thought we might. I mean, I talked to his trainer last offseason, his speed coach, athletic guy who was talking about how Najee trimmed down physically, and we all saw that in person. That was easy to see. Thought he had gotten faster. So I thought there was an outside chance we might see Najee breaking some outside runs for 40, 45 yards for the first time in his NFL career. That did not happen. Now, granted, sometimes you're a missed tackle away from doing that, but still 4 years in, it never happened for him in terms of hitting that home run. So I think there are some other backs in this free agency class that might have a little bit more juice than Najee, and certainly in this draft class, younger guys coming out of the college ranks with less wear and tear, going to have some more juice than Najee. So I think for a lot of reasons, he won't be back. And, if the Steelers do look at, like, Nick Chubb would be interesting to me because I think he could give you Najee-like production, but what's he going to take salary-wise at this point? It'd also just be fascinating for the Brown-Steelers rivalry of Chubb, which is sides and, goes back and plays with Minkah Fitzpatrick after it was Minkah's hit that altered his career the way it did. So, I mean, that would be really intriguing just from like a personal storyline subplot standpoint. But yeah, I absolutely think the Steelers need to hit this draft to go for their next running back. But I think replacing Najee, I'll ask you, I mean, do you think they need more of another banger, another big body bruiser between the tackles? Or do you think because I know like Jerry and Ray and even I have written at times, maybe they need somebody with just more pure speed to be
explosiveness
in the last 4 years.
I think that's what they probably want to run these wide zone schemes that Arthur Smith wants to do. He needs guys that can work the space, that if you're late to your gap when they're setting something out wider and that guy hits the hole, he can turn what Najee Harris would probably make a 4-yard gain into an 8 to 10-yard gain.
But do you have that in Jaylen Warren?
I think you have some of that in Jaylen Warren, but I think that you want to, Jaylen Warren is not going to hold up if you do that. If you just, give him all the carries. That's why I think that there needs to be a solid addition at running back at some point this offseason to back him up. And I mean, a solid, when I say solid, I mean like a good vet, or a really tough rookie. But yeah, I just
don't be sleeping on Jonathan Ward now.
Yes, I won't sleep on Jonathan Ward. But my point here, Brian, though, is that just running back, I think that this is a bigger question now. And again, if Najee Harris isn't off the table, that also changes things as well as far as how they probably address that position this offseason. But looking over, there's plenty of speed and explosive backs that are probably going to be available in the middle rounds, and that's where I think the Steelers could strike the best deals.
I think the nice thing too is they might not have to be hemmed into one or the other. I mean, they might be able to just say, we're going to go best running back available, whether he's like a shorter, faster guy or a bigger bruising guy, because Jaylen Warren's somewhat versatile that way. And you can scour the undrafted ranks. You could running back too is one where you can circle back on guys later in the next waves of free agency, if they don't like their initial market. So I flip back and forth between that. Like if he's there, a Caleb Johnson in the second or third round from Iowa would intrigue me. He's a bigger dude, of course, but a Trevor Etienne from Georgia too, who's got a lot of juice. That would intrigue me too for different reasons. So where do you think, if he's not back here, where do you think Najee will end up?
It's a good question. Max Crosby wants him to go to the Raiders.
Did he say that? I didn't see that.
He said that on a podcast like a couple of weeks ago.
It was like podcast and fiend. That guy's got a lot of podcasts.
He's
got his own. He's everywhere. He's kind of entertaining though.
He is entertaining. I think he knows his brand. But yeah, I've seen that happen. I mean, it's clear Najee has an affinity for the West Coast, so I wouldn't be shocked if he went anywhere over there.
Yeah, his family's out there. I mean, I think it was. You got to think just from a personal standpoint. Like he's the youngest of 5.
Yeah,
we know his life backstory growing up and in the Bay Area. He goes to Alabama to thrive at the college level and does that, wins big, becomes a first-round pick. Then he ends up in Pittsburgh, which obviously players don't have any control over that. So he's been away from his family and, his home base and his time zone for 8 years now. So yeah, I think he tries to make his way back there. There's the Marshawn Lynch connection with the Raiders, and he ran great at Allegiant Stadium last year when the Steelers beat Vegas. So you've got that. I think that Pete Carroll, I think I could see Pete Carroll and Najee hitting it off. Plus, the Raiders are probably the type of team, unless they go out here and spend buku bucks on a quarterback, if they get a Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward in the draft, or even go with a cheaper route, like they're a team that could spend a little more on a guy who's got 4 1,000-yard seasons. So that is one that jumps out to me. And then the other one, maybe the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh. He famously recruited Najee really hard, and everyone thought he was going to go to Michigan. So that would be a funny, two people to, I guess not technically reunite because they never united, but that'd be a nice full circle moment for those two guys.
Would be interesting. I think it's certainly going to be telling to see what happens with Najee Harris, and if he's gone, what do the Steelers do at running back? We can be posted on that. But we got to talk about more quarterback rumors because they're popping up, and this next one I think is kind of interesting as far as using it to compare to Justin Fields. But first, before we do that, got to remind you this show is also brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. They're your mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them today for a free consultation. That's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. We're also brought to you by Moon Township Honda, where you can get your new Honda vehicle at 5802 University Boulevard, Moon Township, PA, or visit their website, moonhonda.com. Here's a message from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
We gave the all-electric Prologue EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Brian, the rumor mill is always a swirling this time of year when there's no news coming out from the Steelers. There's no big changes. There's a lot of speculation. And then there's a lot of... What do you say?
Done? So we're done then?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay, let's wrap this up. Thanks for watching, everybody.
But in all seriousness, there was another comparison this time from Andrew Filipponi of 93.7 The Fan, saying he had a source that says that there's interest by at least one person in the Steelers organization in a guy named Daniel Jones, of course, aka Danny Dimes, quarterback for the New York Football Giants. I thought that was an interesting one because I hear the notion that, like, hey, he is an athletic quarterback. He can run. He does have speed. And in fact, he has over 2,000 rushing yards. Didn't know that until I was looking this up. But I don't feel like if you're going to go with a lesser Justin Fields, that just seems like it would be backwards for the Steelers. When again, they have Justin Fields right in their crosshairs, in their organization right now. You could sign him to a deal. And I don't think it would cost that much. Maybe I'm not misunderstanding how quarterback free agent deals get done, but I don't think Daniel Jones. I understand if you at least examined it, because that's your job, is to make sure that you turn over every stone. But I don't think Daniel Jones would be a good acquisition by the Steelers if they were to make him the new guy at quarterback.
Yeah, I really don't either, and I think the market for those two might be vastly different, and the reason why that gets put out there, as you were alluding to, I think there's a better chance that there will be one team out there that's enamored with Justin Fields. It's like, no, we will throw money at him and see if he can become a franchise quarterback still. I don't see that happening with Daniel Jones. Right. Daniel Jones has already been released by the Giants and available to be claimed. And I just this is where you get more into the anecdotal evidence. I know the statistics between the two are pretty similar over their time in the NFL to this point. And yes, the mobility, while I think Justin Fields is a much better runner, people may underrate Daniel Jones in that space. But it just seems like the vibes around the two, very different. I mean, Daniel Jones has been criticized by Tom Brady, and you have to be playing really, really bad for Tom Brady to openly kind of rip you in your quarterback play. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because Daniel Jones has the goofy look about him, and he came out of Duke instead of Ohio State, and he's got the tongue-in-cheek Danny Dimes nickname, and he had some hilariously pathetic throws at times for the Giants, and they did move on from the 6th overall pick by just straight up releasing him this past season, which is in the same ballpark, but still about 300 feet away from the Bears trading Justin Fields to the Steelers, or 300 yards away maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Daniel Jones, I think he's going to settle into career backup territory. And I think with Justin Fields, there's still a chance that he can put it all together. One thing Daniel Jones has on his side, clearly, that appeals to the Steelers organization, he torched Pitt in college, and we know it's always
Mason
like the
Rudolph,
guys,
baby.
Pitt, Mason Rudolph, James Washington, Ryan Switzer, Mike Williams.
Yep.
The list goes on and on. I'm sure I'm forgetting people, but he did do that when he was with the Blue Devils.
Yeah, yes, he
Mitch
did.
Trubisky.
Mitch Trubisky's another one with UNC. That's funny. I didn't even think about the Pitt connection there. But look, I think that the idea of getting an athletic quarterback makes sense if you're trying to do that. But to me, if Daniel Jones is your number 2, I'm not as mad about that. I think that's a fine spot to have him, because if you can get him on the cheap while you're paying Justin Fields, and Justin Fields knows he's the number 1 guy, that seems like, okay, then you can make an offense about a running quarterback or a mobile quarterback who's going to be able to use his legs at different times. And then you have, if one goes down, you're not changing up the whole offense. It's like last year, it's a different kind of offense when Justin Fields can do what he does and Russell Wilson kind of does what he does. But when you have 2 guys who can run, that might be able to change things up there. So, and at least give you a chance to kind of adjust when you're not able to get your guy in there. So I just think that it makes sense if you're signing him for very cheap as a backup.
Which is possible because, like I said, one guy got traded, the other guy cleared waivers. Like, nobody was like, yeah, we believe in Daniel Jones as a reclamation project. Now, obviously, you'd have to take on the salary with him, but I mean, he cleared waivers and he went to the Vikings, and I guess you could kind of squint and be like, well, if Kevin O'Connell thinks it was worth having him on the team, but no, I mean, he was on the practice squad so initially, and then he got promoted. But seems like the Daniel Jones thing, even though he's only 27, it seems like he's kind of lost the buzz about himself, and
I agree,
might never get it back.
He might not, and that often happens to quarterbacks and any players as they start to age. But but I'm with you. I don't think that if he is a move for the Steelers, he's a backup move. He's not the primary guy.
I also think he was in a less dysfunctional situation with the Giants than Justin Fields was with the Bears. I don't think it's quite apples to apples comparing those. Like, I mean, the Giants are kind of a dumpster fire. Don't get me wrong, but Brian Daboll at least knows offense and was considered kind of an offensive guru, and he couldn't make it work. So that's no bueno for Daniel Jones.
Exactly. I think that's the thing there, is that you could say that he was in a situation where they got the offensive coach to coach up Daniel Jones, whereas Justin Fields is in Chicago, and they've literally never come through with a great quarterback in Chicago. So I could kind of give more of an edge to Justin Fields there, but we will see how the Steelers move in free agency because that's coming up soon. But before all of that, we got to do the combine, because that's next week. All next week, I will be there. Jerry and Ray will be there. We'll be recording from Indianapolis, giving you all the insights of the players we're talking to. Be sure to check out the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette for all of our coverage of the NFL draft and who the Steelers might be going with next year in the coming months. As the draft gets closer and closer to us. But from Chris Carter and Brian Batko, thanks for tuning into the Friday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast. Be sure to tune into all the episodes and all the content for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette here on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes. Back here Monday with another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.